So, Lone Rider here. I just got back from a ride. And I wanted to talk about something that is near and dear to me as a cyclist, and that is the increase in cyclist fatalities in New York. You're looking at, according to the news reports that came out this past week, a doubling of fatalities. And this is something that bothers me greatly. We could take it for granted that, there's always going to be, mishaps and collisions, whether actual accidents or whether what we now refer to as accidents, but really are, largely preventable due to negligence, people doing something illegal or unsafe or whatever. But, whether you call them collisions or accidents or whatever, whether they are accidents or not, the point is that there's always going to be some risk of that sort of thing happening. But here's the question. If there had really been an effort to crack down on unsafe and illegal behavior behind the wheel, would traffic fatalities have doubled for cyclists? I mean, if there really was any effort at all being put into trying to curtail this, would the fatalities have doubled? I could see saying, well, they haven't entirely gone away, right? Because there's always going to be some mishaps and collisions. But to say that they've not only increased, but they've doubled. They're double what they were this time last year. Twice as many people as last year are getting killed in the streets, slaughtered in the streets. You can pretty much take it for granted that they're probably not doing anything really to try and curtail this. If they were, well, the problem might not entirely have gone away. It wouldn't have doubled, right? It's one thing to say, well, it stayed the same, or it didn't decrease as much as we wanted, or maybe it went down, but then it went back up a little bit. But to be like, well, twice as many people are now getting killed in the streets. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they haven't done a dang thing. Now, getting this out of the way right off the bat, a lot of big cities, such as New York, do make token improvements supposed to make things safer for cyclists, whether it's bike sharing, bike lanes, etc. The fact is, a lot of these bike lanes are death traps. Now, when I've been to New York, some of them are usable, but being able to say that not all your bike lanes are, poorly designed death traps that kill people is hardly a ringing endorsement. And that leaves aside the fact that, a bike lane is really a small percentage of actual riding. The most basic area we all share when we go out in public, whether we're walking, biking, etc., is the street. Somebody might make use of a bike lane if it's well designed, safe, not blocked by pedestrians or debris or anything. And it actually is where he needs to go and where he needs to be in terms of lane position on that section of street. After all, if somebody's making a left turn in half a block, they're not going to be riding all the way to the right-hand side where these lanes are normally located. That said, assuming the lane, ticks all the boxes, yes, the cyclist may use it for part of the time, again, until he has to turn off and go make a left turn or something. But the point is that that's only a small part of his commute. How does he get to the bike lane? Where does he go when he leaves it? Obviously, he's using the rest of the roadway. So if you want to improve safety for cyclists or anyone else on the streets, you enforce the laws regarding traffic infractions, especially things that are dangerous. Now, I don't expect the mayor, the mayor's the executive of the city government. I don't expect him to run out there like a patrolman on the beat and start handcuffing people who are doing something wrong, whether they're drunk or on the cell phone or driving without a license or driving while they're here illegally or whatever. I don't expect the mayor to go out there and start enforcing the law himself. But what do I expect? I expect him to take a leadership position. I expect him to set the tone that his administration and that law enforcement in his city are going to follow regarding treating these things seriously and cracking down on them so that hopefully we don't have twice as many people killed as last year and, so on and so forth. The mayor has taken leadership positions on various things. The only time he's really taken a leadership position on roadway safety is actually to argue for things that make roadway safety less safe. For example, he went on CNN a while ago, about a year or so ago, talking about illegal immigration enforcement, and his idea was he didn't want to report people for what he called minor infractions. One of those minor infractions was grand larceny. Another one was DUI. And the mayor actually said, when he was asked by the interviewer on CNN, but Mr. Mayor, do you really think driving under the influence is a minor thing? And the mayor said, well, yeah, as long as it doesn't hurt, nobody gets hurt that time, it's no big deal. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, at the time when I saw this, I said, okay, this guy clearly doesn't care who lives or dies on the streets of the city. But then when a year or so later, you look at it and cyclist traffic fatalities have doubled. After you had a mayor publicly say that he really doesn't think driving drunk is no big deal as long as you can get away with it. Is there anybody who thinks that when the mayor of New York City takes that kind of a leadership position on roadway safety issues, that roadway safety is going to decline, right? And in the meantime, what has he been advocating for? Right? He's advocating against enforcement against dangerous things like driving drunk. What's he advocating for? What's he using his office to promote a crackdown on? Is it enforcing the rules against things that kill people on the streets of New York in such great numbers that twice as many people are getting slain as last year? No, hardly at all. Actually, the crusade of the moment is banning things like plastic grocery bags and styrofoam food containers. Now, did I miss something? Is there an epidemic of plastic bags or styrofoam cups running down the street and killing people? Going on a rampage? If there is, okay, fill me in, and then it totally makes sense that rather than talk about the doubling of cyclist deaths, the mayor is spending his time grandstanding about food containers and packaging materials. But, and I don't care what you think of the idea of banning plastic bags, whether you think it's a draconian, one-size-fits-all stupid thing, and whether you think it's actually a wonderful idea to have the government ban something just because a handful of people can, illegally dump into a litter with it. The point is that whether you like the idea or not is almost irrelevant. The point is, why are they focusing on that instead of the life or death things that are killing people in the streets of the city? There's no answer to this, all right? Now, I get it. Mayor Deblasio wants to grandstand. Plastic bags and styrofoam aren't the only thing they've spent their time on lately. There's been a huge push to legalize weed, for example. I guess if you, smoke weed, this is something you want to have happen. But, for the rest of us, it's really it's a minor issue, and it's something that may not even be a really good idea in terms of they haven't doped out, no pun intended, how to prevent, let's say people driving under the influence of weed, right? We have breathalyzer tests and such like that for alcohol. What are we going to do to see if people are under the influence of marijuana? I honestly don't know. Obviously, if people are going to be publicly using marijuana, using it openly because it's legal to use it, then we're going to have to figure out a way to determine whether people operating motor vehicles are under the influence of said marijuana. And while we have had a lot of practice doing that with alcohol, we haven't had a lot of practice with that with marijuana because it's illegal. I mean, if they catch you with marijuana in your car, you're assumed to be intoxicated and they just take you in. And it's possession of an illegal substance anyway. It's not like you like a beer, you can have a beer. It's just if you have too many and you're drunk, then you're unsafe, then you're breaking the law. The question, I guess, is why is the mayor devoting his efforts to things like this? Things like legalizing weed, which at best is, a trivial concern to most people, and at worst could actually present its own set of public safety hazards, in particular to the roadways. And then, tilting at environmentalist windmills with things like grocery bags and styrofoam. The same newscast that I heard on the radio that first told me last week about this doubling in cyclist fatalities also told me that in the next breath, New York's law against styrofoam packaging goes into effect very soon. So wait a minute. While the number of cyclists on the streets of New York City being killed was doubling, while it was doubling, New York City government officials were spending their time not trying to curtail the number of people being killed in their streets, but rather crafting a law to outlaw styrofoam food containers? This is, even without the serious issue of cyclist fatalities in the roadways, which obviously demands their attention. Instead, just the fact that they're spending so much government time on trying to tell you what food container you can use, it's a good grief. This is what they spend your tax money on. But then that they're choosing to focus on that instead of all the people who are dying, who are being killed in the streets. No way. No way, Jose, Mr. Mayor. I would ask, and cyclists all over, whether like me, they don't even live in New York, or whether they live in New York, cyclists all over, I think, when they hear that cycling fatalities have doubled, but rather than seriously trying to address that, the mayor is spending his time trying to legalize drugs and outlaw grocery containers. I think most people, when they hear something like that, they ask, what the heck is wrong with this guy's brain? Is there something wrong with his medulla oblongata? Did he get hit in the head? Was he, maybe it's this lead paint they're always talking about in the housing. Maybe that had some effect on his honor. But no, in all seriousness, cyclists all over want to know, and I don't live in New York. Somebody might say, you don't live in New York, what do you care? No, but I live in a nearby state, and aside from the fact that fellow cyclists being killed strikes close to home for me, being a cyclist, there's the fact that living in a nearby state, I have to wonder, is my government here going to start copying the bad decisions that the governments there have made that have enabled this thing or led to it? I'm sure there are other causes besides for government policy. For example, the people who are actually committing the crimes and roadway infractions that lead to collisions and death. But the fact that those collisions and those deaths and those infractions have doubled since this time last year tells me that no serious effort has been made to try and curtail them. And then when you look at what the government's doing instead, Mayor Deblasio is out there, the face of New York City's administration, the mayor, the executive, he's out there saying, yeah, drunk driving, no big deal. And while cyclists are being killed in his streets in record numbers, he's out there helping to craft a law to ban styrofoam. I mean, has there been a huge epidemic of styrofoam containers running out in the streets and killing people, or plastic bags, going around and maiming and killing people? No. So then why don't you focus your attention on what is, namely people behind the wheel doing things that are wrong, people on the streets doing things that are dangerous and against the law. But no, they'd rather focus on other things. Wow, deaths skyrocket to the point that twice as many people were slain up to this time this year as last year. So I would argue, and I think any other cyclist would argue, we want to know, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deblasio, what's it going to take for you to try and do something about the fact that people are dying? What's it going to take to pull you away from grandstanding about plastic bags and legalized drugs and making excuses for drunk drivers? What's it going to take to get you to address the fact that your constituents are being killed in the streets in record numbers and you are doing nothing? And I would argue the very fact that I even have to ask that question, or any other cyclist would have to ask that question, is all the reason you ever need to never consider not only not voting for Mayor Deblasio ever again, but any Democrat or anybody who supports his political philosophy, if your concern is roadway safety and getting home alive tomorrow. All right? You've heard, the expression, fiddling while Rome burns. Well, he's fiddling with styrofoam and plastic bags while people are being killed in the streets, and he can't even take himself away from that long enough to make a seriously convincing denunciation of the fact that people are being killed in the streets, let alone actually, I don't know, maybe try and enforce some laws and do something, use all the influence he has as mayor that he can use to try and set the tone and policy of the administration. He's very good at using that to go after things like styrofoam cups. Why don't you use that to go after things that, actually kill people? Just a thought. Lone Rider out.